Well, I was thinking about this a little bit. I don't know who has more pressure, me following my neurosurgeon or my neurosurgeon worried about me, because I'm like his guitar, I guess, up here right now. And hopefully I can, reflect positively on him. I honestly, when he asked me to speak on this, I was still in the hospital. It was 6 months ago, and I couldn't move a toe. I could barely move a toe. And he wanted me to come stand up and speak in this thing, and I could see he had a lot more confidence in my potential than I did myself. Because at that time, I gotta be honest with you, my whole life goal was to get off of the minced and moist menu. In fact, I was even staging a little hunger strike there so I could figure out how to get through it. I want to just tell you really quickly also, you can see some of my disclosures here. I am also still in the middle of this. So this is where I was before my accident. This was at my accident. And I'm probably right about in here somewhere. So I'm still progressing, still moving. But I want to talk with you for just a moment about a little phrase, this in the blink of an eye. That's something that has haunted me over the last few months, how your life can completely change in just a moment. We had been, my wife and I were invited down to Costa Rica by a friend, and he had been asking us over and over, you've got to come down and see some of these trails down here and come ride with us. And so I figured this was a good time. It was February, happened to be my wife's birthday. Our anniversary was during that time, and I was late to figure out what to do. And I thought, oh, this is a perfect time. We'll just go on a mountain biking trip down to Costa Rica. And so we went down there, and we got there, and these were some of the things that we were doing. One day, we were riding up in the this beautiful, kind of these misty 7,500 foot mountain areas and doing some riding like this. Another day we were down in the jungles and riding some different jumps like this. And so this was supposed to be 2 days of riding, and then the third day we were just going to go do a little bit of sightseeing, go down to the beach and look around a little bit. So as you can imagine, it was perfect. We went through the first 2 days. We had had a great time, biked one day the one way and another day the next day. And then the third day we were going to be going, but my friend asked me, he said, hey, there's a guy down here. He's a pro mountain bike rider. He goes, would you just come and do one ride? And he just wants to show you what he can do. And so I have a bad problem. I think of myself much younger than I am. All of my employees are much younger. I ride with them all the time. Everything is great. So we went out and we did a ride, and it was a brand new trail, something I'd never been on before, and it was a black diamond level trail, so there were gap jumps. And these jumps were the type that when you come off the jump, there's tabletops, which are great. If you mess up on a tabletop, you could just land on it and roll down the other one. Well, this one was a gap jump, and it kind of had a big valley, lots of gap jumps, but big valleys in the middle, and it's like an Evel Knievel type of thing. You want to make sure you get over it. So I had, you know the lines, you try to follow them. So we get up to the top of this, and the pro rider says, I'm going to go first. I want you to watch me, see what we do. And they're like, okay. I turned to my friend Norm, and I said, you want to go? And he goes, no, I'm tired. I'll do the rear. I'll follow behind you. So I said, okay. So I turned, as I went and looked, he was gone. And so I followed down the trail, and as I came around this corner, all of a sudden I came up on this jump. And the last thing I remember was saying this phrase, uh-oh. And I blacked out. And next thing you know, I woke up on the trail, head down, and looking up in on the canopy and realizing I couldn't move anything beneath my chin. I was terrified, and by the way, a lot of people have asked at this point, they say, how fast were you going? And I have no idea. I can tell you this, I know I was going at least breakneck speed. So it was, as we got going, the problem was they were trying to, some other Costa Ricans got there and they were trying to figure out, hey, what are we going, how are we going to get him out of here? They brought in a pickup truck and they said, we're going to just haul him down. It was about a 20-minute ride on a very bumpy road, and then another 90 minutes to the hospital. And, but this is a story, by the way, of miracles. The first miracle happened because my friend Norm, the one that invited us down, happens to be his day job was he was a life flight paramedic. And so he jumped in and he said, we're not doing any of that. We need to have a helicopter. And then he whispered to me and he said, I'm going to say some things on the phone right now. I'm going to make it sound a lot worse than it is, but this is just so we can get the helicopter coming. And what really happened, I found out afterwards, he spoke exactly the truth, but he was just trying to make me feel good about the situation. So the helicopter came. It made 6 passes. It couldn't land. There was no place to land with the canopy. They were whacking and doing everything they could to get out with machetes. And they finally, and the helicopter finally said, we're going to have to leave. And he said, and Norm said, you've got to stay, just find a place to land, we'll come to you. And so they made this, they got up, whacking through this area, got up to the top of a clearing, and were able to land and get me to the hospital. And that was miracle number 2 for me. What happened was, when I got to the hospital, the ER doctor said to me, what's going on? What's your pain level? And on a scale of 1 to 10, and I said 13. And he said, okay, we got to do an MRI. And I said, okay, is there anything we can do for the pain before then? And he said, no. MRI, and I go, how long is it going to last? And he says, probably about 45 minutes, but if you move, it's gonna, they'll have to start over. So I got in there in the worst pain of my life and could not, I could have been in there for 3 hours, 3 days. I have no idea how long I was in there, but at the point where I could not do, felt like I couldn't stay in there 1 second longer, they pulled me out. By the way, there were no headphones, which I've done these things where nobody counting down saying, hey, 10 minutes to go till you're done. It was tough. As we got out of there, though, they came back and they said, by the way, I don't even know if this is a picture of my neck. For all I know, this is my femur, or it looks like legs here. I honestly don't know what this is, but I'm hoping, is this the correct thing, doctor? It works okay? All right, good. They said I had a C6 and C7 fracture and then a spinal cord injury, and they wanted to operate immediately. I, thank goodness at that time, my wife Nancy and Norm finally got to the hospital. And they said, wait a minute, what is our window? How long do we have? And he said, at most 48 hours. And he said, okay, we're going to go back to the USA. And they were pushing hard to do the operation there. But he then messaged his paramedic network. They could not find a plane. Finally, they found one in Alabama that could get there the next day, the next evening, and fly me back. And so that was probably one of the toughest 18 hours of my life, because they did put an IV into me, but as soon as they gave me, I guess, morphine, my blood pressure dropped. And so the little attendant there said, I can't give him any more, because if I give him more, he goes there and I go to jail. So I spent the next 18 hours just trying to deal with pain. And it was probably one of the hardest times of my life. This was the low of low. There was a point in there where I was laying there and there was a nurse or a young attendant to the side, and I finally just said, is there a doctor that I could talk to? And he said, well, I am your doctor. And as best as I could, I looked over at him and I said, you are so young. And he says, I'm 27 years old, but I started practicing when I was 17. And I was like, all right, I am going to die here in Costa Rica, and Doogie Howser is my doctor. So they finally got me back on the plane. By the way, this happens to be the most expensive plane flight I've ever taken in my life. It was awesome. I don't remember a lot of it. By that time, I was pretty well drugged out. I did find out there was one other thing that happened that was so good. I told my wife to call my one friend. I had more than one friend, but a good friend who was a doctor. And he set in motion a lot of things that happened that in that night, some of the doctors from up here and other places were calling, telling them what to do. They were able to finally give me a central line after 18 hours and stabilize me a little bit more so I could get back. It was funny because the Costa Rican hospital, they kept saying, you know, whatever we do, the American hospital is just going to yank everything out. And I was like, okay, very good. When I did get back, I arrived 2 days later, 10 a.m. in that morning, and within 4 hours, I was in the operating room. And this looks really cool. I had, no idea all this stuff was in me. In fact, my doctor told me, he said he'd gotten a great deal on screws at Lowe's before he came in. And then I met Tim here, who showed me just actually today a titanium screw. It was about this big, I guess. Maybe mine's not that big, but I was that was some really cool things that we got those. So I then started a long journey back. And this is, if you could just do those down just a little bit, thank you. This is a place where I just started learning everything again. This was a rebirth for me. I had to learn to swallow again. I had to learn to breathe again. I was terrified to cough because I could not, or to aspirate because I couldn't cough. Everything just seemed like it was a first step, and I had to be right in the moment. If I looked too far in the back and got into the woulda, coulda, shouldas, it was just too painful. If I looked ahead on the mountain that I had to climb, it was too tall, and it was just, I didn't know how I could go. The only place I could be was in the moment, and had to just take it a step at a time. I took great joy in just the first toe wiggle, or the first time I could sit up on the side of the bed and not collapse, or even having the ability to swallow without choking. It was, but I was committed that I was going to do everything I could with what I had at that time. The therapy and everything I was going through was extremely tough. There was one point, by the way, where they gave me a barium swallow test, and it was interesting because I was barely getting everything back together. And one of the assistants said, now you did sign the waiver that you might not be able to swallow again, right? And I go, wait, what? And they said, oh, wait, you're in emergency surgery. Don't worry about that. And I go, wait, what? Anyway, it was just one of those things. Every single moment was felt like Everest. This particular thing, I'm lifting here, I like to say I was lifting about 25 pounds. Look how easy he handles that 25 pounds. It was, but I started to realize there was a perspective shift that happened for me. And I received 2 gifts. And the first gift that I received was the gift of gratitude. I started looking at it saying, I could have been dead on that mountain, or I could have had been fully paralyzed from my chin down. So anything that I get back is a gift. And I was so grateful for that. Every medical interaction that I had with nurses or therapists or doctors became extremely personal to me. There was also, the second gift was the gift of love. I had felt this just overwhelming love from people and from the caregivers. And then I started to feel so much love towards other people. That carried me through some of the hardest times. I began to feel like I was more than just the patient in room 112. It was amazing for me how people would just, doctors would come and sit down and talk with me, or out of their way, or nurses off shifts would come and talk to me, and that meant so much to me. Even some of my therapists, we had these little things where they'd walk into the room and play theme music. It would be like, I Want to Ride My Bicycle from Queen, or Don't Stop Believing, or some of those things. Nothing's going to stop us now. Then I got into this long recovery process. And I found that recovery was a lot longer than I thought that it was going to be, and a lot longer than insurance thought it was going to be. I was surprised that, you can see, by the way, on the back of my head there, I lost all my hair from my impact. I think it's coming back now. I've gotten a good haircut on the back, but that was just how hard I'd hit my head in this crash. But I found that even insurance would look at it and they'd say, well, whether you sprain your wrist or you have a spinal cord injury, it's the same 20 visits. So it's been a journey, thank goodness. And I've heard some of the therapists' speeches, talks that have been given. I am so grateful for OTs and PTs that have helped me through this journey. It has been an incredible journey, and again, I'm so grateful that I only have an SCI and not a TBI. This has been a process where I have learned and gained hope in neuroplasticity, as I've learned. One of the doctors that I'm working with gave me a book and read on that, and it's been incredible for me, giving me so much hope that I am not going to always stay in this exact condition. I can progress. I can keep moving forward. There is another thing that happened in rehab that has been, rehab guilt is real. You'll find that you'll be up there among your new family, and somebody who's in a wheelchair or in another situation is in so much worse situation, and they come and say, oh, if only I could walk like you. And it's hard. You start to feel bad for them and then feel guilty. And a therapist told me, he said, it was very poignant, he said, you can't, don't discount your own journey. Everybody has their own journey. Well, what are the lessons? And that's what I want to get to, because I know I'm the last speaker and I don't want to keep you guys longer. But lesson number one is you write your own story. When I was, and as I've gone through this, I'd have people come up in wheelchairs, for example, and say, you'll be okay. This is how it is. Or I'd have a therapist that might say to me, we need to be realistic. On the other hand, I had a guy come up to me and say, oh, I broke my neck. I didn't even know it was broken for 2 or 3 months. You're going to be fine. All of these meant well. They were trying to help me, but I finally realized in all of that confusion that I had to write my own story. This was my story to tell. Lesson number 2, hope spreads. Hope can come in the smallest of things. A toe wiggle, a word from a doctor, a therapist, or a loved one. Something as small as you've got this. You don't need to lie to somebody, but you can be positive in how you say things, or things will work out. The third one is positivity is power. It can be the different, and I'm one, I've had a lot of nights that I have cried, that I have felt sorry or looked back on, well, what happened, this recurring nightmare of what was that stupid decision that I made that changed everything. But once you're past that, you have to get back into the positive mindset. You have to be able to move forward and to say, it's going to be okay. Whatever the outcome is, it's going to be okay, and how grateful I am for what I am now. The fourth lesson for me is the vision. to be able to look to something in the future and believe that it can happen. I have done many times in my life where over these past few months, where I have imagined myself doing something and actually walking through that exercise in my brain, and then it's incredible. I can do it better the next time. It's connecting what I can believe in my head will then translate through to more of what my body can do later. And finally, the one pedal stroke at a time. This is my bike metaphor. If you're looking at a tall mountain, how are you going to get to it? You can psych yourself out. You can be looking and saying, there is no way I'm going to get up there. Well, how are you going to get up there? You start by pedaling one pedal stroke at a time. And by doing that, you're going to be able to get up there. You can't start looking in the past and trying to figure out how you got here. You can't look too far in the future. You have to be in the present. And going up that hill, there are going to be harder times and easier times. It's like also pounding a rock, another metaphor that we use a lot. As you're hitting on that rock, you don't know what stroke it was that's actually going to make that rock chip. It's probably accumulation of a lot of those hits. But it's that persistence, that getting up day in and day out through all of the pain, through all of the heartache. So, to me, to you, I want to talk for a moment just about what, if there's anything I can give you, you've already talked about this. You are not just healers of the body. You are builders of futures. You are going to see patients who are broken, scared, uncertain, but you can see what they can become. Also, every role matters. Even the small words matter. The little things that you say carry so heavily with a patient. They'll think about them over and over. I'm so grateful for the small words that have been said to me over these past few months that have buoyed me up and helped me in those tough times. And then finally, I am the living proof of the good that you have done through all of your hard work. I'm so grateful to the medical community. Well, I want to show you a video here for just a second, and I want to come full circle. I have had a goal through all of this to get back on a bicycle again. And I've had therapists tell me, well, that's great, Chris, but you need to understand that it's highly unlikely with the injury that you incurred that your balance will allow you to be on a two-wheel bike again. There's three-wheel bikes you might be able to use or anything like that. And so I was like, okay, I got it. Finally, I texted one of my therapists and I said, is there any chance that I could even just look at this and try it? And they said, he said, just bring a bike up. So we brought a bike up to the gym up at the place that I've been going, and they put an aid on the left, an aid on the right, and an aid behind me. I felt like the President of the United States. I was going around and I started pedaling. And funny enough, I actually had better balance on a bike than I do walking. Sometimes my wife thinks that I wouldn't be able to pass a sobriety test of how I walk right now. But I was so happy with that. I stopped and I said, all right, what are the next steps? And the therapist said to me, all right, there are no next steps. You have to get permission from your neurosurgeon, and they are next to impossible to get a hold of. While he was doing that, I texted Dr. Edwards, and as it just so happens, and I don't know if this is always the case, but within 30 seconds, he texted back and he goes, no issues for me, do what you want. And so this is the next step. This happened just a bit ago. This is my wife.
I thought we were going to practice this at therapy, but off he goes by himself. This is insane. Especially because his legs aren't working great today. Let's hope he can stop.
Well, actually, since then, by the way, my wife and I have been biking up to 15 miles a day. And I'm still banned from dirt. I have a new boss. She's a beautiful little blonde girl. She's been with me for years and years, my wife. And she tells me what I can do and can't do, and I still haven't been able to convince her to go on trails yet. But I am so grateful for that. Today marks 7 months from the day that I had my surgery. And it is I call it my rebirth day, because everything started again for me. I don't realize why I had to learn to swallow again, to breathe again, to walk again. I've learned more parts of my body than I care to even know, and it's usually a point of weakness. It's like, Chris, watch your peroneals, watch your glute med, watch your hip flexors. Man, it's so weak. And I'm like going, could we just choose one part of my body that might be strong? I know all the weak parts. I also have a label. I know I'm, by label, I'm a high-functioning quadriplegic. But I also am more than that. I am so grateful for all of the things that you have done. I'm a deeply spiritual person, and through all of this, there have been many miracles that I have seen. And one of the hardest things for me to come to a confession almost is, if I had to go through this again, would you do it to receive these? And yes, I would. It has been the most incredible journey of my life, and I am so grateful for that. I have written, I'm a meticulous journal writer, and I have written in there all of the things that you all have done, the tender things that you have done out of your ordinary day of work, that you'll reach out, that you ask how I'm doing, that you talk, that buoy me up. I am so grateful for that. And I am so grateful for the ability to stand in front of you, because the fact of the matter is, I'm just a patient. And there are hundreds and thousands of patients that all of you have done. But the difference is, you don't know really what role you may be playing in someone else's miracle. And so I am so grateful for each part that you have all played in my miracle. Thank you.